And then there are the others, the Rashbam, the Seforno, the Ibn Ezra, the Radak, the Ralbag, all of whom reject Rashi's interpretation that the subject is Lavan HaArami, who intended to Oved Avi, Yaakov Avinu. Rather, the subject is the Avi, and that the Arami Oved is a descriptive of the Avi, that my Avi was an Arami Oved who was forced to emigrate to Egypt. Accordingly, while Rashi opted to interpret the Aleph Bet Daled in terms of destruction and annihilation, according to the other Mefarshi Chumash, Aleph Bet Daled is to be read in this context as an expression of ruin and total loss. That my Avi, my ancestor, was a homeless Aramean, a poor Aramean, a persecuted Aramean, one who was exiled to Padam Aram, referring to Yaakov, exiled from Padam Aram, referring to Avraham, the wandering Jew, forced to move from country to country. In this case, Vayered Mitzrayimah, due to circumstances of extreme poverty, the family ultimately emigrated to Mitzrayim, where they re-established themselves as a Goy Gadol Atzum V'Rav. The thrust of the declaration is best expressed in the words of Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, who, in his commentary to Arami Oved Avi, writes, "My father was an Aramean close to ruin. Their forebears had been promised a future as an independent nation on the soil of Canaan, yet it was a family without a future. Their only rights were that they could live in Padam Aram, and on account of the extreme precarious situation, Yaakov's clan went to Egypt." He goes on to write, "According to human judgment, he had no prospects of ever attaining independence, and it was in this condition that he went down to Egypt, a foreign land even more alien to him than Padam Aram in terms of language, customs, its outlook on life. Vayagasham, there remained Gerim, strangers, in a totally foreign environment. Yet, Vayehi Sham L'Goy Gadol Atzum V'Rav, there, contrary to all reasonable expectations, united by their spirit and moral qualities, they became a separate national identity, and, by God's blessing, they became strong and numerous." Hirsch is echoing the Rashbam, the Seforno, the Ibn Ezra, the Radak, the Ralbag, that with the opening words of Arami Oved Avi, those bringing the Bikurim are stating that originally the forebearers of the nation, the Avot, were in a situation where they had no legal rights to the land, and by bringing the Bikurim, fruits that had been grown on their land, along with the actual Bikurim, there is the acknowledgement of God's intervention in causing the fortunes of the destitute to make a complete turnaround from poverty to wealth, from persecution to nationhood, from exile to redemption, as expressed in the mitzvah of Bikurim. And once again, echoes of a theme found in the Haggadah. In footnote number 3, the Rebbe takes note of the fact that Rashi parts company from the other Mefarshei HaTorah and offers an explanation as to why he rejects their interpretation. He suggests that if the point of the declaration with Arami Oved Avi and subsequent emigration to Egypt was to emphasize homelessness, the poverty, the persecution that Yaakov faced while living in both Padam Aram and Canaan, then the details recorded in Pasuk 6, 7, and 8 regarding the severity of the Egyptian slavery, their cry to help, and God's eventual involvement in their release is not germane to the overall thrust of the declaration. In the words of the footnote, Ein nafka mina klal prate kushi hashibud. The details of the shibud, the enslavement, are not germane to the point of the declaration, and as such is superfluous. The declaration accordingly should have started from Devarim 26:5. Arami Oved Avi Vayered Mitzrayimah Vayaga Sham B'Mitei Me'at Vayehi Sham L'Goy Gadol Atzum V'Rav. Then the opening line of 26:8 Vayotzienu Hashem Mitzrayim, and then moved on to Pasuk 9 Vayevienu El HaMakom Hazeh V'Yitan Lanu Et Haaretz Hazot Eretz Zavat Chalav U'Dvash. The reality is that the declaration does include extensive details about the Egyptian slavery, and it is for this reason, the Rebbe argues, Rashi reads a different script into this declaration, namely a recognition of God's intervention in rescuing our forebearers from the threat of annihilation. Firstly, Yaakov from Lavan, and then the nation as a whole from Pharaoh in Egypt. In the words of Rashi, Mazkir Chastei HaMakom. The purpose of the declaration is to take note of the acts of chesed perpetrated by God on behalf of the nation. And hence, by articulating the severity of the situation, the inclusion of Pasuk 6, 7, and 8 highlights and amplifies the degree of Chastei HaMakom, God's intervention on behalf of Bnei Yisrael.